Hi, I'm Bruce Huffman of the Distinguished Flying Cross Society. The Distinguished Flying Cross is our nation's fourth highest award presented for valor in flight. We would like to tell you the story of a great American pilot. We hope you enjoy his story as much as we've enjoyed bringing it to you.
If I've learned anything from talking to old, successful people, it's that nothing is simple. There aren't any secret books, there aren't any top 10 lists, there are no formulas for success. So anyway, break. I was seated next to this woman on an international flight, and I knew I had to make a friend, or else the next 9 hours were gonna be really awful. So we got to talking, ironically, about success, why some people make a difference in life and other people don't. She said, if everything becomes easy, you stop working. Now that was a really interesting thought because it made me think. There are people out there who don't work at all. Have you ever wondered why some people succeed and other people don't? Well, I'd like to introduce you to Steve Pisanos. Steve Pisanos was a youthful, reckless punk. He was also an illegal alien. And he became an American hero.
I have to really tell you how I fell in love with the airplane. I was about 13 years old on my way to school one day, and all of a sudden a biplane of the Greek Air Force appeared overhead, and it began to do the most astonishing acrobatics I have ever seen. I stood right there with my mouth wide open, a pounding heart, and the guy tumbling, looping and snapping and everything, and when it flew away, I said to myself right there, and I remember those words to this day, when I grow up, I am going to become a military aviator and nothing else. From then on, school and books meant nothing to me. I began to skip school and walk some 25 kilometers to the aerodrome to watch the airplanes fly. I was really totally crazy. And of course, by doing that, I didn't graduate from school, with any flags and diplomas. I was a third-class student, and I couldn't really try when I tried to get information about joining the Air Force Academy, I didn't have the qualifications. So it was then when I said to myself, to heck with that, I'm going to go to America. Of course, I had no money, I couldn't speak English, and I didn't have anybody here to really, help me.
So on his 18th birthday, and without saying anything to his folks, Steve joined the Greek Merchant Marine, and he got a job on a 10,000-ton freighter. And they left Greece on the 23rd of March for a place Steve had never heard of before, a place called Baltimore.
On board the ship, I had learned from a guy, one of my firemen I was working with, that he had been there before in Baltimore, and they went to New York to see his friend's uncle. I said, how did you go to New York? You don't speak English. Well, I said, you don't need to speak English. The only thing that you need to know is a ticket for New York, to buy your ticket. I had repeated those words when I was traveling cold down below as an assistant fireman about 1,000 times, so I knew exactly what I was saying.
Ticket to New York. With only $6 in his pocket and those 4 words of English, Steve managed to get there.
The train arrived in New York, came out on 34th Street and 8th Avenue, crying like a baby who had lost his mother at the shopping mall. I didn't know where on earth to go in.
So he wandered the streets until he came upon a Greek movie theater where he heard a familiar sound, the Greek language.
What are you doing here? Looks like, you came out from a boat. I said, I did. I told him what I had done and that I had no place to go. And he said, "You have no place to go?" I said, "No." So he said, "You come with us. This is my brother. We live in Brooklyn." And that's how I was saved when I arrived in America.
So far, this is a pretty typical coming to America story of the early 20th century. But it needs to be stated that the people who came to America were usually pretty much not typical. To uproot and leave your country, not knowing the language, that takes a tremendous amount of purpose, of courage, and of course, the opportunity to truly make your own way once you get there. In Steve's case, no place on earth represented that kind of opportunity like America. And of course, wanting to fly, Steve went to what would soon become the world's largest trainer of pilots and aircrew, the U.S. Army Air Corps. Being an illegal foreigner and at the cusp of World War II, this presented Steve with major obstacles.
I started to fly about 8 months later after I came here at Brooklyn, New York. I tried to join the Army. They wouldn't take me because I was not an American. So a friend of mine, my instructor actually, one day, he said, "Do you really want to fight the Germans?"
The occupation of Greece by the Axis powers began in April of 1941. This occupation brought about terrible hardships for the Greek population. Over 40,000 civilians died in Athens alone from starvation. Tens of thousands more died because of reprisals by the Nazis.
I'll give anything to fight those SOBs because look what they did to Greece. The paper was loaded with pictures and dead people in Athens all over the place. My instructor says, "How would you like to join the RAF?" "But John Hinton." "John," I said, "I can't go to England." No. He said, "The British are here."
3 fighter squadrons, called Eagle Squadrons, were formed by the RAF with volunteer pilots from the United States.
It was then when John Hinton said to me, "You get your logbook and your license and go to the Waldorf Astoria Hotel in New York City. On the 13th floor, there is a room that has a sign outside, Clayton Night Committee."
Their mission was to bring Americans to Canada in order to prepare for the battle that the Allies would eventually fight, even though the U.S. at the time was neutral. 50,000 Americans wanted to fly for the RAF, but only 6,700 made the grade, including one very enthusiastic Greek.
A month later, I was working at the Park Hotel. I got a telephone call and I was informed by Squadron Leader Graves I was accepted to join the Royal Air Force.
Now, for most of the time that Steve had been in America, he'd been working at the Park Hotel, and his big concern was how he was going to break the news to his German boss that he signed up to fight against his German boss's country.
My God, I thought he was going to get up and punch me in the face. He got up and he hugged me like he was my father. He said, "Steve, I want you to go there and give hell to Hitler and his pals. They have ruined Germany." And my God, I got his blessing, and we had the biggest celebration, in the town of Plainfield at the Park Hotel for my departure.
Now, Steve flew a lot of different airplanes in combat. He flew the P-51, the P-47, and the British Supermarine Spitfire. And when I asked him which airplane of his that he'd like me to draw, he asked that I draw his Spitfire. And of course, I had to ask why. Well, first, the Spitfire is a beautiful airplane. As a design, it's a wonderful blend of curves, and it's just perfectly proportioned. Secondly, it was the airplane that he flew in combat for the first time. But thirdly, the Spitfire represented Steve's crazy multinational life, as he was still a Greek citizen, fighting a European war against the Germans in a British airplane decorated with American markings.
I was not an American. And then later on, of course, the U.S. came over to England, and they immediately wanted to get all the Americans from the RAF. My God, they took me in the 4th Fighter Group, even though I was not an American because they needed the pilots. Anyway, it was there where he announced, he said, Lieutenant Pisanos is the first individual ever in American history to be naturalized as a U.S. citizen outside the U.S. continental limits.
By 1944, Steve was flying the P-51B with the 4th Fighter Group, and on March 5th of that year, he added more victories to his tally, bringing his confirmed victory count to 10. However, that day would begin another improbable turn of events that took him out of the cockpit and on the run.
I was at about 22,000 feet when my engine began to cough. So I decided to turn back and try to bail out at about 2,000 feet. I had difficulties jumping from the aircraft, and although I had really come out on the wing, and I was just about ready to slide down and pull the cord. You know, this is after 2,000 feet. And I looked up ahead, you know, and I can see cows, you know, and they got down up ahead. Oh my God, I can't leave the aircraft. And I had to really stay right there with the goddamn aircraft and barely missing a goddamn barn. I thought I was going to hit the goddamn barn. But after that, you know, the right wing dropped down and hit the ground and twisted. The aircraft went a little bit to the right, and I was thrown away to the left, tumbling all over, landed, and I more or less lost my arm. I had a dislocated arm. Oh, I thought my arm is gone, and pain like the devil.
Adding insult to his injury, 2 German soldiers arrived, and they began to shoot at Steve. At first, he thought they were just trying to scare him.
But the second salvo, they hit the goddamn vertical stabilizer of my Mustang like this. Then I knew that they were aiming to kill me before I destroyed the aircraft. I left them, I got in the forest, and that's where I lost them. And for 5 days, I wandered all over the goddamn countryside before I made contact with the resistance.
Now, aside from the guerrilla activities, the French resistance were actually doing a lot of other important things for the war effort. They published underground newspapers, they provided intelligence to the Allies, and they also helped Allied soldiers and airmen get back home. In Steve's case, it took nearly 6 months. And in those 6 months, he found brothers in arms.
They took me out one night to intercept this convoy. They said there will be some 10, 15 trucks with soldiers and stolen property. And they're going to come up northeast of Paris on a highway to Nancy and then Germany. I remember this Frenchman, you know, put his ear down. He said, "Écoutez, listen, arrivez, they have arrived." And so we were standing up there, and all of a sudden, the first truck to appear around the bed, moonlight, they always operated in moonlight. The first, he hit one of those goddamn spikes. The guy lost control of the truck. He went to the right on a ditch. The second truck collided, fire broke up. All the soldiers, you know, came out, and this is where we really open up. I must have killed quite a few. And my friend, Stefan, he said, "You kill a bunch of the son of a God," you know. And this, of course, is the thing I got from France that accompanied the Legion of Honor. I tell you, I never really expected that, but it was a decoration that was developed by Napoleon.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
When you realized that you had taken another life, it was duty, I understand that, but did that affect you?
Oh, yeah, heavens, yeah. Oh, yeah, you took another life, enemy or what have you. But the thing was, you know, you fell back and you said, this is war. And when 2 people or 2 nations are at war, I mean, the killing is so limited. And you have to obey it, or otherwise you have no business to be there. Go home.
With the fall of Nazi Europe, Steve was repatriated, and he ended the war as a highly decorated American ace fighter pilot. He went on to serve in the post-war American Air Force as a test pilot, flying the Century series jets, like the F-102 Delta Dagger. But fortune and fate had one more card to deal. This time not in the line of fire, but as a salesman to the birthplace of his dreams, to be an aviator.
When I got a call from the Pentagon, and they said, Pisanos, how would you like to go to Athens, Greece, as chief of the Air Force mission? I couldn't believe it. I thought somebody was pulling my leg. He said, this is Colonel Tolman, and I am in charge of colonels and generals' assignments. And I asked my people to get me a colonel who can speak Greek, fighter pilot background, and Vietnam background. And he said the only card the IBM machine kicked out was Pisanos, Pisanos, Pisanos. So he said, you're it. The reason they really picked me up was that the Greek Air Force was trying to buy a new fighter. There would be three competitors: us, the British with their Jaguar, and the French with their Mirage. Then Spiro Agnew came in town. The ambassador introduced me to Spiro. And
now, Spiro Agnew was a Greek-American politician, and he served as the 39th Vice President of the U.S. under Richard Nixon. Spiro's father was also a Greek immigrant, and Agnew himself was also a veteran, serving with the 10th Armored Division in Europe during World War II.
All of a sudden, Spiro Agnew looked at me and he waved at me, come over. Spiro said to the Prime Minister, you see what we do with Greeks you send to America? Colonel Pisanos was born here. He came to America, and look at him. I said, Mr. Prime Minister, as I told the Chief of the Air Force, we have tested the Phantom in Vietnam. Then I said, Mr. Prime Minister, Washington has told me, and I told the Chief of the Air Force, we're going to support you with spare parts for the next 20 years. This was 1972. 10 days later, all the papers in Athens, the Air Force will buy the Phantom. In fact, the station chief, CIA chief, he said to me, Steve, if the French invite you for dinner or something at their place, do not accept. They hate your guts. You tumble them, they were trying to sell the Mirage, and you just hit them in the head. They bought some 45 Phantoms. How many people really understand this business, never give up? And to my estimation, if you want to be successful in life today, you have to have a dream and an iron determination. And the third item, never give up.
Have you ever given up?
No.
No, never.
No. The word freedom is written on the flag, the American flag. If you look closely, you can see an invisible word in there, freedom. People cannot see it, but I can, because I respect the flag, and I love the American flag, because it helped me fulfill my dream.
Everyone can imagine their paycheck, that payday when they get the money, the power, the friends that they think they deserve. But that stuff never comes easily. It always comes at a price. What it takes is metal, not gold or silver. I'm talking about the metal that comes when you focus on something bigger than just your immediate desires. Now, there are a lot of forces out there that want us to divide, to think small. But for me, when I'm tempted with those thoughts, I'm really grateful for people like Steve Pisanos, who achieved a bigger life. A life bigger than himself, a life bigger than his family, a life even bigger than his country. A life where he was successful because he had the freedom to be who he wanted to be.